When you think of witches, you most likely think of Halloween, the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, or maybe the Charmed Ones. Our Western society has painted witchcraft as an occult practice, and television and the media has made us think of witches as women wearing pointy hats and flying around on a broomstick. However, there are witches in modern society who practice witchcraft daily. They could be a neighbor, your child's teacher, or your best friend could practice in secret. Today, we are going to explore witches and witchcraft. What is their history? Why are there so many witches in modern society? Do they fly around on broomsticks? Are they dangerous? All your questions will be answered soon. Witchcraft, traditionally the exercise or invocation of alleged supernatural powers to control people or events, practices typically involving sorcery or magic. The term witchcraft and witch derive from Old English witchcraft, from Wicca, masculine, or wis, feminine, pronounced witcha and witcha, respectively, denoting someone who practices sorcery, and from craft, meaning craft or skill. This term is often mispronounced as Wicca when discussing the modern-day religion of witchcraft. In order to fully understand witches and why they have returned to cast spells on all of us in the year 2021, we will have to take a look at their history and the two main religions associated with witchcraft today, paganism and Wicca. Don't want to say it wrong. The Salem Witch Trials. This will be a very brief outline as many people were accused and prosecuted. I'm going to discuss the main cases involved that began the trials and what finally stopped this hysteria. The Salem Witch Trials were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people accused of witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts between February 1692 and May 1693. More than 200 people were accused, 30 were found guilty, 19 of whom were executed by hanging, 14 women and 5 men. One other man, Gillis Corey, was pressed to death for refusing to plead, and at least 5 people died in jail. In the 11th century, attitudes towards witchcraft and sorcery began to change, a process that would radically transform the Western perception of witchcraft and associate it with heresy and the devil. By the 14th century, fear of heresy and of Satan had added changes of diabolism to the usual indictment of witches. Malevolent sorcery. It was this combination of sorcery and its association with the devil that made Western witchcraft unique. From the 14th century through the 18th century, witches were believed to repudiate Jesus Christ, to worship the devil and make pacts with him, selling one's soul in exchange for Satan's assistance, to employ demons to accomplish magical deeds, and to desecrate the crucifix and the consecrated bread and wine of the Holy Communion. It was also believed that they rode through the air at night to sabbats, which were secret meetings, where they engaged in sexual orgies and even had sex with Satan, that they changed shapes from human to animal or from one human form to another, that they often had familiar spirits in the form of animals, and that they kidnapped and murdered children for the purpose of eating them or rendering their fat for magical ointments. This fabric of ideas was a fantasy, although some people undoubtedly practice sorcery with the intent to harm, and some may actually have worshipped the devil. In reality, no one ever fit the concept of the witch. Nonetheless, the witch's crimes were defined in law. The witch hunt varied enormously in place and in time, but they were united by a common and coherent theological and legal worldview. In 1688, the behavior of several children in the home of the Goodwin family in Boston results in the accusation, trial, and execution of their Irish washerwoman Anne Glover, also known as Goody Glover, for witchcraft. On January 20th of 1692, 11-year-old Abigail Williams and 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris began behaving much as the Goodwin children acted 3 years earlier. Soon, Ann Putnam Jr. and other Salem girls begin acting similarly. In mid-February of the same year, a local doctor, historically assumed to be Dr. Griggs, attends to the afflicted girls and first suggests that witchcraft may be the cause. Around February 25th, Mary Sibley, or Sibley, a neighbor of the Parris family, instructs John Indian, the husband of Tituba, to make a witch cake of rye meal and the girls' urine to be fed to a dog in order to discover who is bewitching the girls. Yeah, like that would work. According to English folk white magic practices. She later is called out by Reverend Parris for this, and her expression of regret is accepted by the congregation. Pressured by ministers and townspeople to say who caused her odd behavior, Elizabeth Parris identifies Tituba. The girls later accuse Sarah Osborne and Sarah Good of witchcraft. On March 11th, Ann Putnam Jr. shows symptoms of affliction by witchcraft. Mercy Lewis, Mary Walcott, and Mary Warren later alleged affliction as well. On March 12th, Ann Putnam Jr. accuses Martha Corey of witchcraft. On October 6th, 8 children in custody are released on £2,500 bail. On October 12th, Governor Phips writes to the Privy Council of King William and Queen Mary, saying that he has stopped the proceedings and referring to what danger some of their innocent subjects might be exposed to if the evidence of the afflicted persons only did prevail, i.e., spectral evidence. On October 29th, Phips prohibits further arrests, releases many of the accused from prison, and dissolves the court of Oyer and Terminer. On December 16th, an act is passed for the establishment of a superior court of assizes and general gaol delivery to convene in January and prosecute the remaining people in custody. After that, everyone seemed to be found not guilty. It became more and more apparent that witches were non-existent and that these trials were based on misinformation or on negative personal feelings the victim had towards the accused. On February 21st of the next year, Governor Phips writes to England that 53 people have already been cleared, failing to be indicted by grand jurors or found not guilty at trial, and that he has vacated the death sentences of those who have been sentenced to be executed. The letter read, I hereby declare that as soon as I came from fighting and understood what danger some of their innocent subjects might be exposed to, if the evidence of the afflicted persons only did prevail either to the committing or trying of any of them, I did before any application was made unto me about it. Put a stop to the proceedings of the court, and they are now stopped till their majesties' pleasure be known. Governor Phips, Boston, October 12, 1692. The witch trials were finally over. And in 1697, on January 14th, the General Court declared a day of contrition for the hysteria and false accusations, for which there was fasting and praying for forgiveness. In 1700, Abigail Faulkner Sr. requests that the Massachusetts General Court reverse the attainder on her name. In 1706, Ann Putnam Jr. stands before her church and offers an apology for her part in the witch trials. Now we look back on the Salem Witch Trials as a time when mental health issues could have been severely misunderstood, as many people have claimed those who were burned at the stake were merely suffering from mental health issues. However, it appears most of the trials occurred due to personal issues the victims had toward the accused. After that, the families of those who were prosecuted and sentenced to death during these trials spent years trying to defend their family members' innocence and fought against the court system to do so. Many were not seen as innocent still. This is because so many people still believed in witchcraft, in Satan, or the occult, much like we seem to today. Paganism. Paganism represents a wide variety of traditions that emphasize reverence for nature and a revival of ancient polytheistic and animistic religious practices. Some modern forms of paganism have their roots in 19th century CE European nationalism, including the British Order of Druids. But most contemporary pagan groups trace their immediate organizational roots to the 1960s and have an emphasis on archetypal psychology and a spiritual interest in nature. Paganism is not a traditional religion per se, because it does not have any official doctrine, but it does have some common characteristics, joining the great variety of traditions. One of the common beliefs is the divine presence in nature and the reverence of the natural order in life. Spiritual growth is related to the cycles of the earth, and great emphasis is placed on ecological concerns. Monotheism is almost universally rejected within paganism, and most pagan traditions are particularly interested in the revival of ancient polytheist religious traditions, including the Norse, Northern Europe, and Celtic, Britain traditions. Many pagan traditions are internationally reconstructionist in that they aim to revive many of the lost rituals of the ancient traditions, including holy days and seasonal celebrations. Besides nature, many pagans also worship a variety of gods and goddesses, including spirits which can represent national and local heroes, as well as deceased family members. In this sense, many pagans try to honor their ancestry and ancestors. Some pagan traditions include ritual magic, but this practice is not universal. Some pagans limit their religious practice to the veneration of nature. However, mythologies from around the world often emerged in cultures with horticultural or agricultural economics. Thus, such myths generally have strong fertility or natural imagery. Various deities are associated with various elements of the natural world: the sky, the sea, the earth, trees, rivers, forests, the hunt, grain, and so forth. Engaging in religious practice informed by such natural imagery can be a direct way of cultivating a rich spirituality of devotion to the earth, i.e. Gaia. Sorry if I said that wrong. Today, paganism and Wicca have been placed under the same umbrella, and we will discuss that more later. Wicca, or misspelt and pronounced as Wicca. Wicca can be traced to a retired British civil servant, Gerald Brousseau Gardner. He was born in 1884 and died in 1964. Gardner spent most of his career in Asia, where he became familiar with a variety of occult beliefs and magical practices. He also read widely in Western esoteric literature, including the writings of the British occultist Aleister Crowley. We will be doing a deep dive on him soon. Wicca is predominantly a Western movement whose followers practice witchcraft and nature worship, and who see it as a religion based on pre-Christian traditions of Northern and Western Europe. Adherents of Wicca worship the goddess, honor nature, practice ceremonial magic, invoke the aid of deities, and celebrate Halloween, the summer solstice, and the vernal equinox. A parallel movement, neo-paganism, also worshiped the goddess and practiced witchcraft, but eschewed the designation witch. Neo-pagans were found throughout the English-speaking world and across northern and western Europe. Estimates of the number of adherents range dramatically, with the number of Wiccans in the United States believed to be between 100,000 and more than 1.5 million. The rise of Wicca and neo-paganism is due in part to increasing religious tolerance and syncretism, a growing awareness of the symbolism of the unconscious, the retreat of Christianity, the popularity of fantasy and science fiction, the growth of feminism, the ascendancy of deconstructionist and relativist theory, and an increasing emphasis upon individuality and subjectivity. Most modern neo-pagans distrustful of the demands of traditional religions, eschew doctrine or creed, and engage in the ritual expression of symbolic and experiential meanings. Although neo-paganism incorporates the emotional involvement and ritual practices associated with religion into its tradition, many neo-pagans prefer to think of themselves as practicing magic rather than religion. Both Wiccans and neo-pagans also have strong ecological and environmental concerns and celebrate the change of seasons with elaborate rituals. Covens, which ideally number 10 to 15 members and are entered through an initiation ritual, sometimes align with one of many coven associations. As coven members master the practice of magic and become familiar with the rituals, they pass through 2 degrees of initiation. There is a 3rd degree for those who wish to enter the priesthood. What do Wiccans believe? They believe in the goddess, respect nature, and hold both polytheistic and pantheistic views. Most Wiccans accept the so-called Wiccan Rite, an ethical code that states, "If it harm none, do what you will." Wiccans believe in meditation and participate in rituals throughout the year, celebrating the new and full moon, as well as the vernal equinox, summer solstice, and Halloween, which they call Samhain. Wiccan rites include invoking the aid of the deities, practicing ceremonial magic, and sharing a ritual meal. If you search online, you will find several communities dedicated to Wiccans. Several shops open to buy magical potions and ceremonial pieces as well. Many practice in different ways. It is hard to pinpoint the different types of Wiccans as it is such a broad religion, one that is very much based on paganism as well. Spirituality is now firmly placed in mainstream culture. The growing interest in astrology driven by millennials, as well as the popularity of crystals and tarot cards via the ballooning wellness industry, have brought mysticism from the fringes and right into your Instagram, Facebook, and even your YouTube feed. Casting spells and assembling altars have become quite lucrative. You can attend a fall equinox ritual organized by Airbnb, sign up for subscription witch boxes offering the equivalent of Blue Apron for magic making, and buy aura cleanses on Etsy. Instagram's reigning witch influencer Brie Luna has more than 450,000 followers and has collaborated with Coach, Refinery29, and Smashbox, for which she recently introduced a line of cosmetics inspired by the transformative quality of crystals. As the 21st century began, Wiccans and neo-pagans were found throughout the English-speaking world and across northern and western Europe. Estimates of adherents range dramatically, as I mentioned, with the number of Wiccans in the United States believed to be between 100,000 and more than 1.5 million. The Pagan Federation, an international fellowship, serves the larger Wiccan neo-pagan community. Today, the Pagan Federation has placed Wiccans and neo-pagans under the same umbrella, which is how so many people confuse the two. Being a witch is very popular today, but why? What about today makes us want to start casting spells again all of a sudden? The latest witch renaissance coincides with a growing fascination with astrology, crystals, and tarot, which, like magic, practitioners consider ways to tap into unseen, unconventional sources of power, and which can be especially appealing for people who feel disenfranchised or who have grown weary of trying to enact change by working within the system. Modern witchcraft has drawn more women than men, as well as many people of color and queer or transgender individuals. A witch can be any gender. We have seen a rise in holistic medicine as well as of late, due to society no longer having trust and faith in Western medicine. Another example of this is how the anti-vaccination community seemed to be on the rise again, despite all science and medicine explaining not vaccinating can lead to severe illness or even death. However, when we stop putting trust into our doctors, scientists, and political figures, we begin to look for the answers elsewhere. Lately, we have been looking for the answers in tarot cards and crystal readings. A great example of this is most recently in DC, when several witches met on Capitol Hill in order to protest a comment they did not appreciate. As you can see, there are many reasons why witchcraft is on the rise in this century. What do you think the main reason is? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. In conclusion, the history of witchcraft is hard to pinpoint. It has a long history, and many would argue that African culture began witchcraft. This is because of their practice of voodoo and other occult practices. Let me know if you want me to dive into that in another video. The issue with witchcraft is that it is often seen as a cult, meaning that there are ties to Satanism within it. However, that is not always the case. Let's end that stigma right now. Many witches, especially in today's culture, don't even realize they are practicing what Aleister Crowley taught. They don't understand that connection. It is also fair to say that there are two types of magic that most witches practice: white magic, or good magic, and black magic, or evil magic. It is said that black magic has ties to Satanism, but the rest of witchcraft is merely people celebrating nature, having rituals that involve lighting candles and chanting, having meetups which are no different than usual social gatherings. I mean, besides maybe some spells being cast, and then worshiping the gods. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I have said this before when covering communities such as this, and I will say it again. There is nothing wrong with being a practicing witch today. If you want to have fun casting spells, doing chants, lighting candles, etc., go for it. As long as you are not hurting anyone, there is no harm done. If it harm none, do what you will, right? However, as soon as you begin to sell your tarot card readings as witchcraft, or you begin to charge people for spells, then I have an issue. There is a gray area where people often sell the ritualistic materials, crystals, books of spells, and etc. However, I don't have much of an issue with that. If there is a demand and you aren't overcharging, then there is no issue. However, if you are practicing witchcraft, I ask that you be careful of those trying to take advantage of you. There are scammers everywhere, and I am sure that they exist in this realm as well. Luckily, we are not living in the time of the Salem Witch Trials, although many who practice witchcraft publicly do claim they have received scrutiny. I must ask people not to do that. If you would not make fun of someone's religion, do not make fun of someone practicing witchcraft, as for many, it is their religion. Wicca and paganism are still seen as religions by many, and therefore we should not be judging people based on this. The main issue here is, why don't we trust our politicians, our doctors, and others in authority? Why are we turning to casting spells and reading tarot cards to try to gain some sense of control in this world? I don't have all the answers to those questions yet, and even if I did, I doubt it would put a stop to witchcraft. Please do give the video a like and subscribe if you're new here. I have opened up memberships on my channel, so be sure to check those out. Every bit helps me run this channel and continue making good quality content for you. I mean, I think it's at least decent quality. Let me know what you think in the comments below about witches, witchcraft, and even how we can combat our lack of trust in authority figures. Besides that, be careful on Halloween at midnight, since I hear that is when the real witches are resurrected and none of us are safe.